Hello and welcome to CTN. To learn more about the show, please visit CIOTalkNetwork.com. And the topic for today is marrying legacy systems to modern marvels. What are we talking about here? It is about, on one hand, legacy systems have always been giving us heartburn while they've always been there and they've worked in a stable manner. But there is at some point, all of us are trying to pivot towards the newest and the latest and greatest technologies, which give us more features and functions and allow us to change at the speed of business. But then, on one hand, you have to carry the legacy systems. And on the other hand, you got AI, you got IoT, you got cloud, you got security, many other newer upcoming systems and processes and technologies we want to adopt. We cannot drop legacy systems for the simple reason they are so deeply entrenched. We cannot just go gung-ho with the latest technologies without knowing fully what the true potential is going to be till they are tested out a little bit. And we have seen many of the newer technologies really don't hold ground after a little bit. And we have seen enough cases. And that's why we always want to make sure that whatever we take on, number one, it works well. On the other hand, it also then works well with the legacy systems, which we cannot let go. So what is that marriage going to look like? There will be fights, there will be tussles, but still it can be a companionship versus one working to take out the other. With that said, we would like to discuss strategies and ways which leaders have tried to do this or kind of make this, broker this marriage. And what was the result? What were the lessons learned? So for that, I have with me Helen Norris, who's the Vice President and Chief Information Officer with Chapman University. Hey, Helen, how are you?
Good. Thank you, Sanjog. Good to see you today.
Beautiful. Great to have you again. And I have Hardik Bhatt, who is the Chief Executive Officer with SDI Presence. Hey, Hardik, how's life there?
Sanjog, life's very good in Chicago. Nice to see you.
Very nice to see you again. Now, with that said, so Helen, let's start with you. What do you think is the reason why, after, I would say, many decades of us trying relentlessly to get rid of legacy systems, we haven't been able to? Is it that we have gotten them so deeply entrenched that simply there's no way out, or we do not have the skills, or somehow the newer technology is not showing us enough promise that it can very well be replaced and still we can go about doing business and keep innovating?
Well, Sanjog, in short, these systems just work. They're not sexy. Their interfaces aren't pretty, but we have, 20-year-old enterprise systems that simply get the job done. In my organization, I have legacy systems that run our finances, our HR systems, and our student registration systems. Now, nobody loves these systems, but they're dependable. They stay up. Students can register for class. People get paychecks. Departments can buy goods and services, and vendors get paid. They're just workhorses. Now, if we wanted to replace these systems, I think one of the main reasons that we keep these systems around is that it is so expensive to move away from a legacy system, and it's so complicated and challenging. And recently, we've had an experience in the country where the Department of Education has moved to a new system for financial aid, the FAFSA process. And that is an illustration of how expensive and how challenging it is to move to a new system. And I think when we see experiences like that, it makes us really think carefully before we talk about putting a new financial system in place. The rollout was hard. It was a multi-year project. I imagine it was very high cost. It was quite late, and it had many problems. So, when you see experiences like that as an organization, you're inclined to say, hey, my current system's working. Let me just do things around the edges to make the experience better for our customers and our country.
Now, I think you've been around the block and you've worked in a variety of organizations, both private and public, and you've seen your share, or rather dealt with your share of legacy systems, and also you've been on the cutting edge. What have you seen is the underlying root cause? Because frankly, some things are obvious reasons, but there could be some not so obvious reasons why we have not, number one, able to let go, or we have not intentionally let go of legacy systems.
Sanjog, so I've been CIO twice, right? So I'll tell you about both my stints. So first one was 2006 to 2010. And I was the CIO for the city of Chicago, and we had mainframe. We had mainframe systems we had many systems sitting on mainframe. And there was a push from the budget office to figure out cost reduction as a whole. So that was part one there. Uh, especially the operational cost reduction, not the capital cost reduction, the operating cost reduction. The second part was we were modernizing, like I'll give you example of the Chicago Police Department. We were modernizing them, bringing a lot of technology into the car, which was at that time, mobile was new. We were talking about Verizon, one XRTT with 9,600 bits per second kind of speed, but we were still building those. So we evaluated where are our old systems, which are expensive, that need to change. And we basically said, okay, mainframe, we've been using it for 30 years. And we need to figure out a way if that can generate cost reduction. And it did. And we started that implementation of mainframe migration or mainframe retirement, I would say. And luckily what happened was to Helen's point, they worked, but they did not work in the field. We had to start bringing the data in the field. So there was a user explanation why we need to change that. So users agreed that they needs change. There was a budget explanation that, we can reduce the operating cost if you do invest in capital funding to build the new systems, replacing the mainframe systems. And we could. I started that in 2008. I left the city in 2010, but my successors continued that and they shut down, the city of Chicago shut down the mainframe in 2015, savings millions of dollars. But then those millions of dollars savings did get replaced by the operating cost of the new systems that we built. So that keeps going up. Now, fast forward to my state of Illinois days, 2015 to late 2017 or almost 2018, state of Illinois depended on mainframe also heavily. And we did not have a financial kind of model that could say that, states used large systems, so replacement costs are extremely large too. So there, instead of retiring mainframe, we in fact invested more in mainframe and MIPS, MIPS, whatever the cost that was per MIPS. And we in fact expanded the use of mainframe while kind of building the newer systems like the new ERP, new licensing, etc. And then tried to connect those. I think to go back to Helen's point, we need to make sure that one, they work. Do we really, really need to change them? Why do we need to change that? We clearly define the need. And second is clearly define the cost, both operating and the cost of transition, and if there's real savings there. And the third is the user experience. I think those three, if we can define those, then we can make the right decision.
Now,
Could I
let's,
add,
yeah,
could I
go ahead,
add
please,
something?
Helen.
Sure. I'd
Sure.
just like to add that one of the other things about the decisions, really fascinating to hear Hardik's two different stories. One of the other issues I think that either drive us away from the legacy systems or keep us with it is the ability to find talent to manage those systems, or in fact, to manage the newer systems that we want to replace them with or augment them with. I think that that's something that we have to think about as these systems become older. It's increasingly difficult to find staff who have worked with them. Plus, when we're talking about integrating cutting edge technologies with legacy systems, what we're really talking about is bringing two different skill sets to the table. And I think that's in terms of both the technical skills and the approach to systems. When you're working in a cutting edge environment, it's all about flexibility and risk taking. But when you're working with a legacy system, it's all about precision and reducing risk and making sure everything works, as Hardik and I have both discussed. So finding a way to bring those two approaches to the table is challenging. And I think it has to be factored into any decision around your legacy systems.
So, Hardik, when you look at your experiences with respect to truly integrating these cutting edge technologies into legacy systems, the obvious ones could be that they simply cannot talk to each other. There's not enough support. What else?
So I think the other thing is user experience to me is crucial. So making sure that, and again, I can go back to the similar examples where we tried to bring in the cutting edge technology in the cars back in the mid part, the second half of the first decade of this century. That's almost now 20 years ago. Um, and it was not easy to get the users to get up to speed with that, to get the users to accept that, because they had a certain motion of their job day, certain things that they would do when they are in the field. And now we are asking them to change that flow. And we are asking them to, oh, no, you need to pause and now capture all of these details in this system while you are in the car, always be parked on the site. And then we'll take care of that data, the technology. And then we integrated that back to the legacy system. The data was flown in, uh, uh, but it was a store and forward kind of technology that we had to use because of the lack of the mobile network and the bandwidth, the robustness that we had. So it was difficult. So to me, the key thing, Sanjog, to me is the end user acceptance and the end user buy-in. If that doesn't happen, I don't want to go into that particular example, but we had a situation where the users basically said, "Yeah, I'm going to use it," and then take your system back, even though we were internal IT for that technology that we had built. So to me, the one of the bigger things that we forget is the user management, user change management.
So, Helen, when you go about presenting the opportunity to replace legacy systems or integrate, everything costs money. And before you jump into it, you don't even know what problems would you encounter. So, how do you go about building a business case and how do you go about making a decision? Because you got to keep the folks at the top involved and they don't want to geek out on the underlying complexities. How would that process look like? Because it's just not the first time you might have done it, but now you're talking about what I call as perfect pairing of legacy systems and innovative technologies where you keep them for the best reasons they should be kept.
I think, as Hardik said, kind of focusing on the end user and the experience that they have with the systems uh, is really a critical piece because, not surprisingly, end user issues, the example Hardik described is really interesting. It makes its way all the way to the top. So, a similar example, maybe not quite as dramatic as being in a police car. We have a legacy financial system. And in the past, one of the areas that we really experienced dissatisfaction and complaints and really actually pain for our end users was in the area of expense reimbursement. So we had a legacy kind of expense reimbursement process. You know, they do spreadsheets and they have to copy the receipts, and it's just not pretty. Um, in the meantime, on the financial system, the core people running the financial systems, the accountants, are very comfortable with that legacy system. They know how to get their work done. So you kind of have two different sets of users, the um, heavy duty end users, but the front end customers are very unhappy. In that situation, we brought in a cutting edge expense management system. We didn't replace the financial system. It was much cheaper and better for the end users for us to bring in that cutting edge and expense system that lets the end user take a photo of their receipt with their phone, like we all want to do, right? And submit their expenses via an app. So we address the issue related to the customer, to the end user, without really changing very much for our colleagues who are on the accounting side. And it was much less costly than replacing the entire system. So addressing that, I think, made it in that way, bringing those two systems together, a cutting edge system that focused on, the faculty and the staff who go out and travel on behalf of the university and just want to get the reimbursement process while still addressing the compliance issues and so forth that our accountants need. The challenges for us were all about integrating the data. We needed real time budget checking and building that technical bridge was complicated. My leadership didn't necessarily need to hear about that or know about that. They just felt comfortable that we had improved the situation for the community in general without bringing on the cost of bringing in a whole new enterprise system.
So I think, how did it become any easier or difficult? Because now you got government, when you experienced with public sector, you had to deal with RFPs. You had very old, solutions which had to get the end of life support, or there is no end of life support. And at the same time, you're trying to work with cutting edge, and you want to try to uh, read through the fine prints of what they are claiming is going to work versus not work. And here you are
Yeah.
trying to integrate. I mean,
Mhm.
how much of a nightmare was it?
I think it is a nightmare if you're not thinking very clearly and not planning ahead. So again, I'll give you a real life example. At the state of Illinois, when I was there 2017, 2015, 2016, 2017, it was a time of mobile apps. Not a lot of people love mobile apps now because it's just too many of them. But at that time, it was a time of mobile apps. So we had these old systems. My oldest system was built in 1974, so about 42 years old. Uh, and obviously, people did not want to interact with those green screens anymore. So we had to build something that was today's thing, that for interacting with those systems. So we built a mobile framework with one of the agencies that was really forward thinking, and we built a mobile framework, and then we used that framework across all the agencies, and we identified like top 10 customer focused priorities for agencies, various agencies, and the top 10 internal user focused priorities, where the pain point was interacting with the systems. The pain point was the time it would take for transactions to happen. And the pain it was to kind of maintaining that, I had to maintain the legacy, because the replacing the legacy could take $100 million in 5 years. So we did not have the choice. So with those priorities identified with the end users, with the agencies, we start and having the framework built out. We started cranking out mobile apps for all of those functions that needed uplift, the facelift that they needed in transaction, easier transactions, etc. needed. And we started building one app per month, and then rolling that out internally, externally. I did three things for us. One, obviously, it made the interacting with the systems easier, because everybody was using mobile phone by that time, or a mobile device. Doesn't need to be a phone, a mobile device. Number two, it kind of gave users what they were looking for, an easier way to transact with the systems. And number three, we did not have to replace the legacy system. We just had to give them a different way of engaging. And I would add one more to that. It actually created such a buzz inside the state as well as outside the state that everybody wanted to be part of what we were doing. So I could easily attract more talent from outside. And I could also get the people who were kind of, okay, we are going to sit here and see what you're doing. And wake up and say, this is a movement. I want to be part of that. So I had the workforce energized behind what we were doing, that just simply because we did some pre-work on what should be done, what cannot be done, and then had a plan of action for the next 20 months.
So, Helen, when you're looking at, and you did mention the skill development, right? That's what is something which holds us back from maintaining legacy systems. But now let's look at a dimension of the skill and the talent at the very workforce and the culture that persists in an organization which is heavily dominated by legacy systems. There are fewer people who know it all in terms of how to, maintain it. Plus, the business knowledge is there, which is deeply entrenched. And then many of those people may not be most thrilled to be learning new technologies, even though they know that that is the future. So, what do you do so that legacy systems, while we're not just removing them right away, but you still want to retool those people versus only banking on them, or maybe retool some of the newer people to learn something old, because these people might be on their way to retirement?
I think the most difficult part of any technical project isn't the technology, right? It's the people part. the culture or the organizational change that a new system might drive and the business process change that it drives. Um, I think the good thing about the approach of retaining a legacy system and augmenting it with newer technologies, as Hardeep described, is that it is more of an increment approach, right? You can put that mobile framework in place and bring in smaller pieces at a time rather than doing a big bang of replacing a system. So it can be easier to make those changes in process and to culture. I think the challenge with that is that it can be a little bit uneven, so that different parts of the organization are moving at different speeds, or systems might be different parts of the organization might be it is still interacting with the legacy systems with the greens, and others are using more modern approaches, and that can be I think a little bit challenging. But the ability to move forward incrementally and bring people along, maybe in a slower, more deliberate way, I think it can make it a little bit easier to bring people along and to reskill them and retool them to work with new systems. Kind of giving them an opportunity to work on a project that's less that where the risk of failure isn't devastating. I think can be very helpful in terms of moving people along.
So I think,
Sanjay, if I
yeah,
could,
go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, if I could add, I think we are talking about legacy systems, but we also have to deal with the legacy thinking. And that's where what Helen said about culture, people, that comes in. And I'll give you an example. So between the two CIO stints, I led smart cities business development for a large multinational firm. And I spent a lot of time in the eastern half of the world, working with large cities. And when you talk about smart cities, you're trying to address traffic congestion, transportation issues. You're trying to have early warning systems built for flooding that's coming. So one of the projects I was working on with city government, it was around creating the early warning system for the flooding, because that city used to get flooded at least a couple of times in a year. And floods, like, literally your streets become rivers, that kind of flooding. And so the idea was, let's put sensors in the upper part of the city. So when the flooding starts, you can start getting automatic sensors and automatic warnings, the warning signs that the flood's coming. So that one, they can move people to the right places, safe places, start moving the traffic that way, and so on and so forth. The vision was fantastic. But the legacy thinking, here it comes in. So we built, like working with the city, built that whole thing. But then the city said, we want to put this, the central operating center, the operation center, which was kind of command and control center for getting all the sensors in, telling everybody else, communicating out externally and everything else. That was built fantastically as well. But then they realized the legacy thinking came in their way when the first time the floods came in after the system was built. The operations center was like every IT, somehow IT gets stuffed into the basement. And this one was also built in a basement. So where does the water go when the flood comes? First thing, basement. So the center itself got flooded. Pretty much first flood, everything was done, was completely wiped out. So again, that, I think to me, apart from the legacy systems, we also need to address the legacy thinking as to, and this is just one example, I'm sure legacy thinking is everywhere, where, what is the role of IT in the business? What is the role of IT in your revenue driving? What is the role of IT in customer experience? And I think I've seen that change happening in the last 4 or 5 years, and COVID kind of accelerated that value of IT understanding in the business. And I see a huge difference in kind of legacy thinking going away, and the new thinking of the technology's place in the world is setting now.
So the question here is, like, I will try to, draw a parallel to a relationship. So when we try to build a relationship, we come in that, yes, we want this to work. And instead of only looking at that they have to dance to my tune, the other partner, for example, in this case, different technologies, instead of them working the way we want, we also try to accommodate what they can realistically do. And that's how any relationship thrives. So the question, and this is for you, Hardik, when you went about taking these initiatives, was from the get-go the intention that legacy systems will need to be wiped out, making way for the new? Or you said, you know what, there's a reckoning, or rather recognition that legacy systems are not going away, and we'll have to make do with what best we can do. There will be compromises, and we know there are for times to come. So what was the sentiment that prevailed when you attempted these modernization activities?
I would say not a single sentiment. I cannot choose one or the other. I think both were tried at different times. There were times, and it also depends on the legacy system itself and the age of the system. And as Helen said, the supportability of the system, the security factors also come in when it comes in. So I think the decision was more upstream, upstream as in the upstream of the project, where the decision has to be made with all of these various factors, whether the legacy can be sustained and built, that newer technology can be built around it, or is it really time to now really cut the cord and rebuild the completely new system? So I would be able to pick one over the other. The best thing to do is assess and make the right choice, whether you need to really replace or you need to. Now, the problem comes in, Sanjog, is when we are talking then about when we are talking about building innovation around the edges of the legacy system, you still have the legacy core and that needs to be supported. And now you are creating and a new kind of layer of technology around it that also will need to be supported. That will also become legacy 20 years from now. So now you're managing two sets of legacies, 40 years old and 20 years old, 20 years from now. So you need to have a plan as to how, at what point, if you decide to create the innovation around it, what point you're going to replace that legacy system so that you are finally, and we are working with one of the customers in the utility space, where they have a 20 years old billing system that is at the core of their billing to all the customers and the customer experience, everything else. But they have built 211 peripheral systems around that billing system. Now they are working on replacing that billing system with the spanking new billing system. That's very good. Today's age, excellent. But that's going to take $1 billion to replace it. That's going to take 4 years to replace. And then they have 211 peripheral systems, and we are doing an assessment for them to see which system is just about 10 years old, can still have 10, 15 years of life left. We just need to integrate that to the newer system. And then which systems need to be replaced or just eliminated in many cases. Those functions, they just built it sitting there. So we are doing that assessment so that while the new system gets replaced and built, we can also change the peripheral systems along with that. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that. That's where the acceleration is important with all of this no code stuff that is available out in the market now.
So, Helen, and I'll just try to build on the last question I
Mhm.
asked Hardik. Would you say that leaders like yourself and the team with you, the intent with which you approach something will make you say things, make you do things, make you go in a given direction? So, if you were to appeal to the rest of the world, which is grappling with this again, legacy and modern technology related integrations, or rather one replacing the other, what mindset would best serve them? Because some things, subconsciously impact you even though we don't realize.
I think that's a really interesting question because I think my intent or my default would be that we need to be very planful and think about long term, as Hardik just described, as we build these integrated, or as we maintain our legacy systems and build the integrations. What we're adding to is, the legacy, the technical debt of the future. And we have to keep that in mind. So I think one approach is to be thinking long term, taking a 10-year view of saying, okay, we know we want our legacy systems to be in place. We want to leverage the investment we've made in those legacy systems and have them survive into the 2030s or the 2040s. And here's what we need to do to get to that point. On the other hand, I'd like to kind of get back to an earlier point that Hardik made, that during the pandemic, we did a lot of work around our legacy systems without having the opportunity to have that planning in place. And in that situation, sometimes necessity was sort of the mother of invention. A particular example, in a university setting, we in California, we needed to deal with a lot of the requirements that the state asked us to deal with around ensuring that our students were safe, whether it was doing COVID tests or managing COVID vaccination data. So we had to figure a way to put those COVID management systems integrated into our student systems without really the opportunity to plan. We just had to do it on a dime. So sometimes necessity can be the mother of invention. I think the things I would encourage people to think about are, what's the impact on your data? Where is your data? Your data are your critical assets for your organization. And as you build this infrastructure that leverages the data from the legacy systems, you need to make sure you're protecting that and treating that appropriately. Is it a sustainable environment that you're building? Is it resilient? Can you maintain it? The multiple systems, 211 systems sitting on a billing system introduces, 211 points of failure and points where security becomes challenging. So in Hardik's example, I think you have to consider all those pieces in as you're thinking about the future.
So that's very good segue for my next question. So Hardik, as you gave that example, because Helen also mentioned about security and risk, right? So risk is inherent in all systems. We can never have a zero risk system. And so you have a, stationary state where legacy system exists as is and some modern things which have been integrated as is, and then you've hardened them through security and risk management processes. But then if you're always, literally always in a mode where we keep transitioning or keep evaluating and keep tinkering with things, whether on the legacy side or the modern, where both of those sides do not have something written on stamp paper that yes, it is risk-free or all the risks have been mitigated, that means your CISO would hate you for always keeping them in that shape. So how does your risk management need to be dealt with when we are always in this transient stage, if you will?
Yeah. So I think if you look at a CISO's life, I'll never want to be a CISO, by the way. I would always want to have a CISO work with me because that's a thankless job. They only remember you when things are not, really bad. But I think as CISOs, so ongoing, they are continuously auditing the existing systems, right? The authentication, the access, and kind of we're doing the penetration testing, doing the ethical hacking. So that your current environment has these risks, and you are kind of addressing the high priority risk, putting the medium and lower priority in the back burner, but eventually you will want to get to it. So you kind of have that understanding of the risk profile of your current infrastructure, current kind of what you have. Now, in the best organizations that either I have worked with or worked for, what I have found is anytime you're trying to bring an innovation, that could be a third-party SaaS system, that could be a platform that you brought in to build something internally, CISO and the security team will be engaged right away from the very beginning. So they will be kind of reviewing the certifications, the compliance, the actual architecture, and see if that will fit into your architecture, and it would be secured as your current environment is. And they would then certify to bring that in. But then they need to stay once it's certified by them, doesn't mean that their job's over or that you forget them. We also have, I've seen successful organizations keep them engaged in a way that they will continue to do kind of interim reviews of the architecture and the system that you're bringing in, especially with the third-party SaaS vulnerabilities creeping into your environment. And that's a huge issue right now that our customers are facing, that, they trust these major third party systems, and the hackers go in and put a vulnerability in their next version that's coming in. You as a customer trust this third party SaaS system. You just bring the next update, not knowing that you're actually bringing in a vulnerability. So we've also started seeing the environment, the actual, the structure changing, where we are seeing a lot of managed SaaS security organization that looks across all of the 20, 30, 40 SaaS systems that you have in your environment for a large organization, and make sure that those third-party systems are also as secure as they could be. So I think, to me, it's knowing your current risk profile and you know what you're doing with it, and then everything new that you do. Now, only thing that I would add to that, and my request to the CISOs and the security teams, is let's not stifle innovation in the name of keeping everything secure. Like, we cannot let you bring anything new, because they have to work and continue to work at the pace of the IT innovation, or at least a little bit slower connected to that. But not as soon as the CISOs and the security team start slowing everything down, saying that you cannot do it without a particular logic or reason, that's when they start becoming unpopular. And then the organization starts moving towards uncontrolled innovation, those shadow ITs. And then you're creating a much riskier environment for you when you do that. So that, to me, is an advice to CISOs if they are listening.
So, Helen, when you look at this whole journey, this is a never-ending journey. I'm sure you've been at it for some time, and it looks like it's going to go on for a little bit, right? So, what's the leadership style and the mindset you need to embrace for you to be able to stay sane, rally everyone, help management understand the need for us to stay on it and make it work no matter what, and keep getting funded? Because it's an animal which is like, it's a beast, which simply doesn't seem to be dying, or it morphs.
Yeah, I don't know if you can really stay sane. So let's just kind of say that. I think um, it is really all about the people. And as a CIO, I think my role as a leader is uh, both inward facing to the IT organization and outward facing to my colleagues across the university and my stakeholders, whether it's the leadership. I also want to just kind of build on something Hardik said around the relationship with the CIO and the CISO is critical to ensuring the safety and the resilience of the environment. But also, I would say it's important for the CIO and the CISO to make sure that the board is engaged in discussions about risk. So I just kind of want to note that I don't think it's the role of either the CISO or the CIO to say this risk is acceptable. It's really the role to bring that discussion to the leadership of the organization and the board, and make sure that we're matching our technology with the organization's appetite for risk. So I think really understanding the organization, its appetite for innovation, appetite for risk, the issues that are on the strategic roadmap for the organization. That's what the CIO, I think, has to be interpreting and bringing back to the IT organization. That is going to drive the decisions around how long we retain our legacy systems, how we treat our legacy systems, what we put in place to manage our legacy systems, and ensuring that we're clear with our teams about the priority of retaining the stability of those systems, if that's what's important to the organization. So I think as a leader, it's important to really develop relationships, to be collaborative, and to listen to what your organizational partners are telling you, and also to be sensitive to how you need to bring your IT staff along from a skills perspective to match the environment that you put in place.
So, Hardik, while I'd like to ask you the exact same question, but with a flavor, given that you're also dabbling in the latest and greatest of Gen AI and any other newer technology, right? Plus, you've seen the legacy. given the craziness that's out there, and AI especially is morphing by the day. And we also want to leverage it to the max. That means newer things will be requested by management and by the business, and you'll have to keep working on it. And with that as the environment, that craziness for the right reasons, perhaps, how would you deal with this legacy and the modern marvels question in this new age and the way it is morphing?
Yeah. And that's a great question, Sanjog. I think, we are living in the age of speed and expectation of speed. And legacy modernization, the expectation or the assumption there, the legacy modernization takes a long time. And one of the reasons why people don't embark on that journey is because I don't think this organization can do that for next 4 years. It's too much to take on. But there are answers available out there now where, you know, you can really modernize with speed, literally cut down the modernization speed down to a fourth. So you can do stuff in days and weeks versus months and years, using the right AI platform that are available there. Do it not risk free, but at least with a lot heavier focus on security. And that to me is an answer to really addressing these legacy modernization speed issue that we have age old. It's like forever. I mean, to me, when we replaced 600 different ERP like systems at the state of Illinois with one SAP Financials, it took us 4+ years to do that for 38 agencies. People don't have that kind of time at the moment. They need to continue to move faster. And that's where these AI platforms, the second part there is every time you build a new system, you're creating a technical debt because, today's new technology is 20 years old technology. So how about but then we've been speaking spoken languages for 10,000 years. And there have been some changes to that, but I'll always find an English speaker everywhere, except, certain parts of the world. Well, how about if I move towards using AI, eliminating the need for code, needing to have a C# programmer or a COBOL programmer, or a .NET or a Java programmer. And if I could let organizations develop stuff in spoken languages, now you're also taking the technical debt issue out of the question. So now you have platforms available out there that addresses both of these. So my hope and my aspiration is that with these platforms over the next 5 years, we should be able to get many organizations, if not all, to a point where they are not carrying 30, 40, 50-year-old systems. They are selectively taking out anything that is older than 20 years. And then obviously you need to do the assessment. And then without adding too much technical debt, modernizing them using speed. That's where, to me, Gen AI or code creating Gen AI, to me, is a lot more important, a lot more critical than text images creating Gen AI. Then that's, to me, as a former programmer and a computer science graduate, now a CEO, that's my aspiration.
Once again, thank you so much, both of you, Helen and Hardik, for sharing your thoughts on how we can work with the modern marvels, bring some good value, but do not forget, or in fact, take care of these legacy systems, which have, almost convinced us that they are the pillars. At the same time, make sure that we do not carry any debt, quote unquote, debt with this legacy. Let it be an asset versus a liability. So thank you so much again.
Thank you, Sanjog and Helen. Nice to meet you.
Thank you. Nice to meet you, Hardik.
Take care.
And for our audience, please subscribe to our podcast and follow us on social media. Once again, this is Sanjog Aul, your host, signing off. Till next week, take care and God bless.